Joining me now, Chris Cillizza, former CNN editor-at-large, author and founder of So What, a daily political newsletter on Substack, and Joe Cunningham. He's a former Democratic congressman from South Carolina. Joe, let me start with you. It does seem like there's a lot of finger-pointing going on right now, and there are a lot of folks who don't seem to want to take a lot of responsibility for what happened, and they're basically saying, well, you know, look, these are things kind of beyond our control.
Yeah, I mean, that's to be expected, right? The truth is, if you start to unpack everything that's happened, I think you got to go back a couple of years ago, whenever, after Biden told us that he would be a transition president, and then he announced his campaign when half of Democratic voters were telling him that they want other options. And so when you look at our party's failures in this election cycle, I think it centers on two things. Number one, are the inability to listen, especially to voters within our own party. And number two, are the inability to communicate to voters. As we went into the general election, obviously Biden's comments calling anybody who supported Trump garbage doesn't help. And it doesn't just impact those people who support Trump, it indirectly impacts, some of those people who's maybe on the fence, but their brother or sister likes Trump. And so somehow they feel indirectly affected by those types of comments and that type of rhetoric. And most people feel like Democratic Party are this party of elitists who are approaching working class like they're the unwashed herd and like it's a form of charity work. So there's this big disconnect. And, I couldn't disagree with Lawrence more when he said it wasn't a landslide. I'd encourage people to zoom out and not just look at the presidential election, but the congressional races, the Senate races. Even here in Charleston, South Carolina, a reliably blue county, saw a lot of countywide seats flip to Republicans. And that goes to show you the coattails of Donald Trump and just how bad the Democratic brand is, especially south of the Mason-Dixon line. I mean, look, it's become an albatross.
And Chris, I want to play you a little bit more. This is number 4 of the blame game going on, where all sorts of different folks, different networks, but all from the left of center are blaming either sexism or racism. Let's listen.
There are levels of sexism and racism that clearly a lot of people in this country are willing to tolerate.
Let's be honest about this, okay? Let's be absolutely blunt about it. There were appeals to racism in this campaign, and there is racial bias in this country, and there is sexism in this country. And anybody who thinks that that did not in any way impact on the outcome of this race is wrong.
What is wrong with this country that they would choose a message of divisiveness, of xenophobia, of racism, of misogyny over a message of inclusiveness?
Chris, a lot of finger pointing.
Yeah, I mean, look, do I think there are people who didn't vote for Kamala Harris because she's a black woman? Sure. Do I think that's why Kamala Harris lost the race? Absolutely not. Look, Donald Trump won 33% of non-white voters. Regardless of what Maria Cardona thinks, the exit polling, which we use as sort of the de facto way that we measure what people thought about these races, and by the way, have forever, said that Donald Trump won Latino men. He performed better among black voters than any Republican nominee in recent history. So I just think that when you ascribe everything and everyone who didn't vote for you as a racist or a sexist, it feels to me like you're missing the message of this election, in which Donald Trump improved his margin. And to the congressman's point about landslides, 48 out of the 50 states, Donald Trump got a higher percentage of the vote in 2024 than he did in 2020. That is not just racists and people who hate women deciding to turn out.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.